Why is Rabbi Nachman of Breslov so ubiquitous? Why is he found everywhere across our Jewish world today? In our rituals, in our liturgy, in our syllabi, our teaching materials, here in Israel, in popular culture, TV, film, music. It's just everywhere. Why is his influence so strongly felt? Well, I don't have one neat answer, but I can share, he lived a life of tremendous struggle, and he was incredibly honest. He was really a genius at sharing that struggle with us. He struggled with what many people today might call depression. It was a psychological aspect to his struggle. There's a spiritual aspect to it as well, clearly. He talked about failing hundreds of times every day, failing at being himself, failing at thinking and saying and doing what he wanted to be the person he wanted to be, and picking himself up and trying yet again to keep going and be a better person. He talked about that level of self-awareness and resilience. He talked about inner voices that we all struggle with, inner voices of self-criticism, inner voices which try and serve as an obstacle to our growth, which try and hold us back, fears that we all have. And he talked about how to work with them, to break through them, so we can see the good in ourselves and others. He was an artist, a very sensitive artist, a very poetic soul. He wrote beautiful poetic stories based on very primal, deep psychological and spiritual archetypes that many people can relate to from all different paths and traditions. They've been compared to the work of Jung and Borges and Kafka. And that artistic soul, he also connected very deeply to music. He talks about how when we do the work of trying to see the good in ourselves and others, we create music, we create melody in our lives. We turn our lives into a piece of music, or a piece of the piece of music that's happening, maybe one melody in the greater symphony that's happening. Similarly, he talked about how when we go out into nature and we pray, when we pray, we're praying in tune, in alignment, as part of this great symphony of prayer happening around us, from the plants and the trees, everything around us praying, that we are part of this bigger piece of music that's happening. These are just a few examples of some of his teachings which have made their way to many, many corners of the Jewish world and beyond. I'd like to invite you to explore a few other ones with me, a few lesser known ones. That's what we're going to do together in our upcoming course. We're going to have 8 sessions, and we'll cover some of the well-known classics I've just mentioned, and the beautiful pieces turned into song by such wonderful musicians as Naomi Shemer, the wonderful songwriter from Israel who also wrote Jerusalem of Gold, very famously, turning his teachings into music. But we'll also cover some of his teachings which, as I say, are not yet so well known, where there's enormous depth. And he's drawing on the entire lineage from the Torah through all of the Hebrew Bible, the Tanakh, early rabbinic texts, the Zohar as well. He's drawing on everything that came before, and what he's doing for us so beautifully is telling us how he persists in his struggle to overcome sadness and grief and loss, which he experienced unfortunately very much of, and physical pain, which he experienced unfortunately a great deal of as well. But he shares so generously, so touchingly, and gives us so much to work with. So I hope you will join us, because this is going to be not only an opportunity to appreciate a person who lived a remarkable life and who left us an incredible array of deeply beautiful and touching and wise teachings, but I really feel he was speaking to people who are struggling with what we're struggling in our world. So this is an opportunity for us to really nourish ourselves from a very, very deep well, from somebody who was the great-grandson of the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement, and who saw himself as part of a very, very long tradition, but also somebody who is so contemporary, who is so on the pulse of what so many of us are experiencing in our world today. And I'm talking about what's going on inside us in terms of what we might call our mental health and our well-being, our psychological and spiritual state, also what's going on outside us in our societies and in our world at large. He was writing very, very much, it seems, to a world that looked a lot like the one that we live in right now. So I hope you'll join us for this opportunity to see what he's saying to us in this moment and how we can benefit from the life that he lived.